Today on Steelers Talk, I'm going to present to you guys 4 new Steelers wide receiver targets that we haven't gone in depth on at this point on the channel. Just giving you 4 more names here that the Steelers could consider to replace George Pickens with as the number 2 receiver in the Steelers offense this year. Before we get into the content today, the freest and easiest way to help out the channel, guys, is to click that thumbs up icon. So if you want the Steelers to add another wide receiver this offseason, do me a favor, click that thumbs up icon, and let's get into today's show. Now, a little bit of a friendly reminder here, guys, that just because I'm talking about a rumor surrounding a wide receiver doesn't necessarily mean I'm saying that the Steelers are definitely going to trade for that player or anything like that. My job is to present possibilities to you guys, give my take on those possibilities, and then, we can kind of discuss about which ones are more realistic and which ones are less realistic. But today, I'm actually going to be going over 4 names that were brought up by Derek Bell, who works for Steelers Now. You can find him on Twitter at SteelersDB. He put out a video talking about some Steelers wide receiver targets, and some of these names I hadn't really considered before. So Derek's someone that knows football. He knows ball. He does a lot of good stuff on his Twitter and on his YouTube channel, so give him a look-see on YouTube and on X if you haven't already. He really knows his stuff. But some kind of out-of-the-box options here that I hadn't really considered before that we're going to talk about today. The first one was Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions. Now, Derek did say in his video breaking this down that this one is a little bit less likely, but J-Mo is somebody that I was really high on coming out of Alabama all those years back. He was drafted 12th overall in the 2022 NFL Draft by the Detroit Lions. He's still only 24 years old, really kind of lanky receiver, 6'1", 180, but he's an absolute burner. Still has 2 years left on his rookie deal after Detroit picked up his 5th-year option this offseason. Now, the thing about Williams is that, the criticism of this kind of trade target is, you just got rid of a problem child in George Pickens. Now you want to bring in a guy that's had multiple suspensions from the National Football League, both for using performance-enhancing drugs and then also for gambling. He was suspended for multiple games for gambling as well. So this is certainly somebody that's had some issues staying on the field when it comes to suspensions and not necessarily behaving in the ways that he should be, but he really broke out last season with the Detroit Lions. He really had a fantastic season where he had over 1,000 yards, and that ability that he brought to the table and the reason why he was drafted by the Detroit Lions 12th overall in 2022 was his ability to separate down the field. He had over 1,000 yards just last year with the Detroit Lions, and he really broke out as a legitimate weapon alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Detroit Lions in 2024. And if the Steelers could add him, he would be a legit number 2 wide receiver to pair with DK Metcalf in the Steelers offense. Now, my take on the Detroit Lions situation here, guys, and what they would consider, I really don't think that they're even going to think about trading Jameson Williams, at least not this offseason. They still got 2 years of contract control on his deal. Of course, it's still his rookie contract, and I maybe next offseason they consider trading him away, especially if he has kind of a lackluster season here in 2025. But right now, he is bona fidely their number 2 wide receiver in their room alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is their number 1 that plays mostly in the slot. Williams is their deep threat. And then after Jameson Williams, there's really not a whole lot there. You got Tim Patrick, you got Khalif Raymond, you bring in Isaac Tesla in the NFL draft this year. And I just don't think Detroit, a team that is trying to win Super Bowls right now, can afford to lose Jameson Williams, even if the Steelers are willing to give them a premium draft asset. So I really don't think Jameson is somebody that is a realistic possibility for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But hey, if the Steelers can find a way to put him on their roster and trade for him, I would absolutely be willing to give up a premium draft asset to bring him here to Pittsburgh. The second name that Derek brought up here in his video and on his list was Quentin Johnston, former first-round pick for the Los Angeles Chargers. Another really interesting name here, guys, because he is a former first-round pick. He brings some great size to the table, really quick for that size as well, which allows him to be a plus route runner for that size. Now, he does have a little bit of a drop issue that we'll get into here, but he's still very young, 23 years old, could be a future option as a legit number 2 wide receiver. As you guys can see there, the size is excellent. It's 6'4", 215 pounds. He was selected 21st overall in the first round of the 2023 draft, and he has at least 2, but potentially 3 years left on his rookie deal. The Steelers would have the option to pick up his 5th-year option next offseason if they were to trade for him. And I do think that Johnson is a better wide receiver than people think that he is. There's been a narrative surrounding and has really crystallized around Quentin Johnson that he is this terrible wide receiver that can't catch the football and all these different things. And drops have been an issue for Johnson, and he's not the best contested catch guy in the world. But this is somebody that had over 700 yards last year as a starting wide receiver in the Chargers offense just last year. He averaged almost 13 yards per catch and had 8 touchdowns. So this is certainly somebody, when you look at the rest of the options out there that the Steelers have at their disposal to trade for, he had some of the best production out of just about anybody else on the market right now. So you guys can take a look at my scouting report for Quinton Johnson this year. The size and speed and quickness combination is what got him drafted, and many people considered him the best wide receiver in the 2023 NFL draft. That quickness and speed really allows him to be a fantastic run after the catch threat. He's really good on bubble screens and on drags, and just getting the ball to him in space is really the way that you should be using a wide receiver like this. And he is an underrated route runner because of that foot speed and that quickness. He can change directions pretty quickly, and he can be a pretty decent weapon as a route runner as well. I do think his route tree is a little bit limited. His hands are certainly lackluster. There's certainly been times throughout his NFL career where his hands have let him down, and he's had some very untimely drops. And then his contested catch rate is just absolutely abysmal through 2 seasons in the NFL. Plus, for a guy as big as he is, the run blocking is definitely underwhelming. For a guy that looks like Tarzan, he kind of plays like Jane, if I'm being completely honest with you, but there's still a role and a place for a guy like Quentin Johnston in the National Football League and in the Steelers offense as well if they were able to pull off a trade for him. Now, you look at the Chargers wide receiver room behind Quentin Johnston, I do think it's better than what the Lions have with Jameson Williams, kind of their situation if they have to trade Jameson Williams. You still have Mike Williams. You still have Trey Harris, who's a really good wide receiver out of Ole Miss. They drafted in round 2. Plus, they took Keandre Lambert-Smith out of Auburn in round 5 this year. Plus, you got Ladd McConkey, who had a fantastic rookie season last year. So could the Chargers potentially look to let go of Quentin Johnston? For me, guys, for the right price, I would absolutely look into it. I'm not going to sit up here and say Johnson would be my number 1 choice or anything like that, but I do think his ability to be a manufactured kind of yards after the catch type of threat, and then also his quickness at his size are 2 assets that the Steelers could use and could potentially lead to him being a legit number 2 receiver to pair with DK Metcalf in this offense. So for me, I would offer a 5th-round pick for Quentin Johnston. He's still young. He's an up-and-coming player. He did have over 700 yards and 8 touchdowns last year for an NFL offense, and because he still has essentially 3 years left of cost control on his rookie deal, that makes him a somewhat valuable asset here. I think the most I'd be willing to give up is a 5th-round pick for him, but let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section for today's pin question. Would you accept this trade for Quentin Johnson, a 5th-round pick, to bring him here to Pittsburgh? Type A for accept or D for decline. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds, and when that happens, take advantage of that time, but let me know if you accept or decline this trade offer. The next receiver that DB brought up here was Ja'Lynn Polk from the New England Patriots. If you remember, Polk was drafted really at the top of the 2nd round by the Pats in last year's NFL draft there in 2024. So he's still very young, just 23 years old. He's 6'1", 203 pounds, so a decent amount of size he's bringing to the table as well. He still has at least 3, but potentially 4 years left on his rookie deal because he just got drafted last year. If you bring him in, you got 3 years at least of cost-controlled wide receiver help there, and then if you pick up that 5th-year option, well, actually, there's no 5th-year option, so it's just 3 years left. Sorry for the mistake there. Graphically, it's just 3 years left on his deal. But plain and simply, guys, I don't love the idea of bringing in Ja'Lynn Polk because I don't think he's that good of a player. I know Derek was a little bit higher than I was on Polk when he was coming out of Washington last year. I honestly thought he reminded me a lot of Kendrick Kendrick Bourne, who's a good receiver, but not a whole lot of upside. I thought there was a lot better receivers than Polk in last year's wide receiver class. But after last season, man, like he had an opportunity to really establish himself in that wide receiver room that was really, really bad last year there with New England, and he only had 12 catches for 87 yards. He did get 2 touchdowns, but just overall not a very good season, not a very productive rookie season for Polk. So I'm definitely out on trading for Polk altogether. Even if it's like a late round pick swap, I really wouldn't be that interested in bringing him in here because I don't think he's that much better than Calvin Austin III or Roman Wilson at this point in his NFL journey. So make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already, if you are having a good time on today's show. We still got one more wide receiver target that Derek Bell brought up in his video earlier this week here that we'll be discussing on today's show. But if you're enjoying today's content, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. Then the final receiver that DB brought up here was Trey Palmer from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Palmer is an absolute burner, okay? Like, that is what he is known for, where he's got that 4.33 speed, and he's still very young, too, just 24 years old. He's still got 2 years left on his rookie deal. He's only played 2 years in the league so far, and he really is kind of the true burner in that Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver room at this point. And, I do think that is his value to an NFL offense, is that this guy's got legit game-wrecking type of speed where he can run away from dudes, all right? Whether it's after the catch, whether it's running vertically down the field as a true deep threat from the slot, that's what he does. Now, the problem with getting a guy like Palmer and, suggesting the Steelers should trade for him, in my opinion, is that he is a bit redundant with Calvin Austin III, all right? Like, what does Calvin do well? He's a fast receiver that can run away from people, pretty good after the catch. He's a vertical threat because of his speed. But outside of that, you're looking for ways that he's going to contribute to an offense. He's more of a true number 3 receiver that's a vertical threat, brings a little bit after the catch as well. But that's exactly Trey Palmer, so I don't really get the reason for going and getting a guy like Trey Palmer, who is bigger than Calvin Austin III. I will say that. He's 190 pounds, whereas Calvin is sub 170. But the skill sets are pretty redundant, in my opinion. And if I'm going to trade for a receiver on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think I would much rather target Ja'Lynn McMillan, last year's third-round draft pick out of Washington. Because you look at what he did last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, put up some really good numbers with Tampa last year, especially after Chris Godwin went down with his injury. McMillan is a really good short to intermediate route runner. He's pretty lanky. He's over 6 foot tall, but he's really good after the catch. He's really good and really fluid mover at the short to intermediate levels of the field. Does have a little bit of a drop issue and doesn't have the most secure hands. Not the best contested catch guy in the world, but if you're looking for a true route runner, and I think that's the type of receiver the Steelers are looking for right now, I think McMillan is the type of guy that the Steelers could certainly add to this offense. And when I look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver room, and I'm looking at the different skill sets that they have inside that room, and I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of Tampa Bay and which receiver I would be open to letting go of, it would be McMillan, because Chris Godwin is kind of like that short to intermediate route runner type that can play on the outside or in the slot. Same thing goes with Emeka Egbuka, their first-round pick this year, and that kind of fits the mold of what Ja'Lynn McMillan is trying to be in the league, right? So if I'm looking at the skill sets and which players that I would be willing to let go of, if I were the Buccaneers, I think Ja'Lynn McMillan is probably the piece that I would be more willing to trade, as opposed to Trey Palmer, who's more of a unique skill set in that Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver room. So who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comments section. Which wide receiver target are you hoping the Steelers land this year? There's a lot of really good options we didn't talk about on today's show. Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, we've Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper. There's a lot of guys out there that a lot of different Steelers fans would like the Steelers to add this offseason. So let me know your preferred wide receiver target down there in the comments section. Thank you guys so much for stopping by to talk some wide receiver trade rumors with us here on Steelers Talk today. I will see you guys next time. And until then, guys, here we go, Steelers.